October 14, 1943, 25,000 feet above German territory, Staff Sergeant Michael Romano kneels in the confined tail section of his B-17, gripping twin 50 caliber machine guns that outweigh him. Through the small plexiglass viewport, he spots a Focke-Wulf 190 maneuvering into attack position, 6 o'clock low, the bomber's weakest point. Romano peers through his ring and bead sight, a rudimentary aiming device consisting of 2 metal posts. He must line up with his target, providing no speed compensation, no deflection calculation, no assistance whatsoever as both aircraft rocket through the sky at combined speeds surpassing 500 miles per hour. He squeezes the trigger. Tracers arc uselessly behind the plunging fighter. The WWII's cannons erupt. 20mm shells rip through aluminum as if it were tissue. This scenario plays out 291 times today during the second Schweinfurt operation. The 8th Air Force launches 291 B-17 flying fortresses deep into Germany without fighter protection. By sunset, 60 bombers, over 20% of the strike force, will be destroyed. Another 138 limp back so severely damaged they'll never return to service. 600 American airmen perish. The numbers are devastating and impossible to maintain. At this pace, no bomber crew will statistically complete their mandatory 25 missions. Mission debriefs expose the harsh reality. Tail gunners, theoretically the bomber's final defense against the preferred German assault angle. Record accuracy rates below 8%. Fighter pilots simply attack from behind, tolerate brief moments of imprecise defensive fire, and systematically dismantle America's billion-dollar strategic bombing initiative, one fortress at a time. Senior commanders convene at 8th Air Force Headquarters in High Wycombe, England. The defensive weaponry intended to transform the B-17 into a flying fortress has failed spectacularly. Without a breakthrough daylight precision bombing, the entire strategic philosophy faces termination. What these commanders don't realize is that at that precise moment, on a frozen hardstand at Bassingbourn Airfield, a 22-year-old tail gunner with minimal formal education is sketching a concept in his logbook that contradicts multiple Army Air Forces regulations. A concept that weapons engineers will declare mechanically unfeasible. A concept that will triple tail gun effectiveness and preserve thousands of American lives. This is the account of the innovation they attempted to prohibit and the gunner who persisted. To grasp why Romano's innovation proved so transformative, you must first comprehend the impossible challenge tail gunners confronted in 1943. The B-17 Flying Fortress enters battle with a defensive strategy, adapted from naval combat, bristling with sufficient machine guns to establish overlapping fire zones. The bombers theoretically defend themselves through sheer ammunition volume. Army Air Forces promotional content describes it as a flying battleship. Reality proves devastatingly different. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano arrives at Bassingbourn Airfield, England in August 1943 as a replacement tail gunner for the 91st Bomb Group. He's a former factory laborer from Pittsburgh. No university education, no engineering training. Barely 19 when he enlists. The Army instructs him for 6 weeks on clearing malfunctions, estimating distances and hoping his rounds connect. His designated station, the tail gunner compartment, measures barely larger than a coffin. He must kneel on a bicycle seat, feet pressed against the aircraft framework, hands wrestling 2 Browning M2 machine guns through a restricted firing arc. The weapons pivot on a basic yoke mount. His targeting system comprises a ring and bead sight, a metal circle with a forward post resembling sights on a frontier weapon. To strike a diving fighter, Romano must estimate the target's velocity relative to his aircraft, calculate deflection angle, where to aim ahead of the target, compensate for projectile drop across distance, perform all calculations while wearing thick gloves in -40-degree temperatures, fire before the German pilot's cannons with 4 times the effective range, turn his station into debris. Expert gunners from peacetime. Aerial gunnery academies attempt identical shots under controlled circumstances. Their accuracy rates barely exceed 12%. In actual combat, stressed, oxygen-deprived and under hostile fire, real accuracy rates collapse to 6 and 8%. The Luftwaffe identifies this weakness instantly. German fighter tactics evolved throughout 1943. Attack from 6 o'clock level or low, endure 15 to 20 seconds of inaccurate tailgun fire, close to 200 yards, and deliver catastrophic 20mm cannon strikes. Luftwaffe after-action documentation describes B-17 tail positions as minimally threatening, accuracy inadequate to discourage attacks. August 17, 1943, the first Schweinfurt operation, 60 bombers destroyed. October 8, 1943, Bremen operation, 30 bombers destroyed. October 10, 1943, Münster operation, 30 bombers destroyed. The 8th Air Force loses bombers faster than factories can manufacture them. General Henry Hap Arnold, commanding general of the Army Air Forces, receives casualty statistics in Washington and contemplates whether daylight bombing remains practical. Engineers suggest solutions: additional guns, larger caliber, powered turrets. Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center initiates development of an enhanced tail turret, but development schedules extend into 1944. Powered turret prototypes exist, but installation demands removing the complete tail assembly, a months-long factory modification impossible to execute on bombers already stationed in England. Meanwhile, men perish. Michael Romano conducts his first combat operation on August 19, 1943, Gilsee-Rijgen Airfield, Netherlands. He expends 480 rounds at 3 attacking FW-190s. He believes he registers hits. Gun camera recordings reviewed subsequently reveal every tracer passed harmlessly behind the targets. The fighters eliminate 2 bombers in his formation. Following his third operation, Romano remains on the hardstand after touchdown, examining his weapons. His hands tremble, not from terror but from the physical strain of controlling 84-pound weapons through sustained engagement while kneeling at altitude. That evening, he drafts his initial design concept. The issue isn't the weapon, he understands. It's not even the mounting. It's that tail gunners fire blindly, pursuing targets they cannot adequately track, aiming at spatial points they cannot precisely predict. What Romano requires is something the Army Air Forces hasn't supplied: a method to observe where his projectiles will actually travel before he engages the trigger. He requires a reflector sight, but the tail position's confined dimensions make standard reflector installation impossible unless someone violates the regulations. Staff Sergeant Michael Romano possesses precisely 0 credentials for weapons engineering. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1924, Romano abandons high school at 16 to labor in steel mills during his father's sickness. He operates blast furnaces, repairs equipment, and absorbs practical metallurgy through experimentation rather than textbooks. When America joins the conflict, he enlists in the Army Air Forces, anticipating escape from factory labor. The military assigns him to Aerial Gunnery Academy, not from any proven aptitude, but because he's compact enough to occupy the tail station. At 5'7" and 145 pounds, Romano can squeeze into spaces that eliminate larger candidates. He completes fundamental gunnery instruction at Harlingen, Texas, achieving merely average scores on range assessments. His instructors observe adequate trigger discipline and satisfactory weapons care. Nobody recognizes him as extraordinary. He receives his silver gunner's wings and assignment to a B-17 crew as an interchangeable component in the enormous machinery of the 8th Air Force. But Romano possesses one characteristic his training documentation doesn't reflect: he cannot tolerate systems that malfunction. Following his 5th combat operation, October 4, 1943, Frankfurt, Romano's frustration reaches breaking point. His bomber returns with 78 flak penetrations and damage from 2 fighter engagements. Romano discharged 620 rounds. He struck nothing. His closest friend, the tail gunner on an adjacent B-17, perished when a Bf-109 attacked from directly astern and Romano's counterfire failed to dissuade it. That evening, Romano proceeds to the aircraft revetment, carrying a maintenance flashlight and his logbook. He ascends into the tail section, still reeking of cordite and hydraulic fluid, and studies the ring and bead sight. The moment of understanding arrives, not as dramatic epiphany, but as straightforward observation. Romano notices his reflection in the curved plexiglass viewport. In that warped mirror, he can observe behind his aircraft's tail angles the ring and bead sight can never encompass. He sketches rapidly. What if he mounted compact mirrors at strategic angles, providing peripheral vision beyond the gun sight's restricted field of view? What if he angled them to display the tracer trajectories from his own weapons, allowing him to adjust fire onto targets by observing the reflection, rather than squinting through inadequate iron sights? Then the essential breakthrough. What if he merged mirrors with a basic reflector sight, a glass piece etched with an aiming reticle positioned to allow him to track targets, while simultaneously monitoring his tracer patterns in the peripheral mirrors? It's not a genuine computing gun sight, like the advanced gyroscopic systems in fighters. It's a jury-rigged combination of reflective surfaces and improvised aiming references. But it might function. Romano invests 3 hours that evening, sketching designs, measuring angles, calculating sightlines with a carpenter's protractor, salvaged from the base machine shop. By daybreak, he possesses detailed drawings of a mirror-assisted reflector sight system requiring no powered elements, no complex installation, and no factory alteration. He also faces a complication. His design contradicts Army Air Force's Technical Order 0120 EG2, which forbids unauthorized alterations to defensive armament. Installation without authorization could result in court-martial. Romano determines he doesn't care. Romano discovers his accomplice in an unexpected location, the base sheet metal workshop. Technical Sergeant Frank Kellerman, a 38-year-old aircraft mechanic from Detroit, served in the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Depression, constructing bridges and repairing equipment with whatever materials he could obtain. When Romano approaches him on October 7th with sketches and a request for unauthorized fabrication work, Kellerman examines the drawings for fewer than 5 minutes. "This is prohibited," Kellerman states directly. Romano acknowledges. "Yes, Sergeant. You're requesting me to alter defensive armament without engineering authorization, which contradicts approximately 6 different technical orders." "Yes, Sergeant." Kellerman glances up from the drawings. "When do you fly next?" "Tomorrow, Münster. Then we'd better proceed quickly." They commence after midnight in a workshop corner using scrap materials Kellerman has unofficially acquired. The fundamental components originate from salvaged aircraft parts, curved mirrors from damaged navigation instruments, plexiglass sheets from shattered canopy sections, aluminum brackets from written-off airframes. The reflector sight itself, the essential component, originates from a destroyed P-47 Thunderbolt fighter. Kellerman extracts the undamaged gun sight assembly designed for nose-mounted installation and re-engineers the mounting brackets to accommodate the tail gunner's cramped station. The mirror system proves more demanding. Romano wants 3 compact convex mirrors positioned at angles, providing peripheral vision of his tracer trajectories without obstructing his forward view. Kellerman fabricates adjustable brackets using sheet aluminum and ball socket joints from control surface linkages. They labor through the night fitting components, testing sightlines, making modifications. At 0430 hours, Kellerman installs the complete assembly in Romano's aircraft, a B-17G designated knockout dropper. While the flight line sleeps, the installation appears crude. Brackets attach with standard aircraft bolts, mirrors affix using safety wire. The reflector sight mounts to the gun yoke via a welded bracket that would horrify Boeing engineers. Nothing about the alteration appears in the aircraft's maintenance logbook. At dawn briefing, Romano informs nobody about the new sight. His pilot, Lieutenant James Holbrook, doesn't inspect the tail section before departure. The group commander doesn't know. The squadron armament officer doesn't know. They launch for Münster at 0730 hours, over Germany at 10:15 hours. A Bf-109 initiates its attack run. 6 o'clock low approaching rapidly. Romano rotates his weapons, peers through the new reflector sight. The illuminated reticle floats in his field of vision, superimposing the target. In his peripheral vision, the mirrors display his gun barrel's alignment angles, instant feedback about where his weapons point. He fires a 3-second burst. The tracer pattern visible in the mirrors reveals he's shooting behind the target. He adjusts, leading the fighter by the reticle's diameter, fires again. This time the tracers and the target converge. The Bf-109's engine detonates. The fighter rolls inverted and spirals toward Earth, trailing black smoke. Romano stares at his weapons, then at the mirrors, then back at the vacant sky where the fighter flew seconds earlier. Holy, he whispers into his oxygen mask. It functions. Romano lands at 1340 hours with one confirmed destruction, his first. The celebration endures precisely 20 minutes. At 1400 hours during routine post-flight inspection, Crew Chief Master Sergeant Donald Pierce discovers the unauthorized alterations. Pierce immediately reports to the squadron armament officer, Captain Richard Voss, who arrives at the hardstand carrying a clipboard and an expression of barely restrained anger. Sergeant Romano, Voss states, voice taut with military precision, "Would you care to explain the unauthorized equipment installed in your gun station?" Romano stands at attention. "Sir, I installed an enhanced sighting system." "You installed what?" Voss's voice elevates. "Do you comprehend the regulations you violated?" Technical Order 0120 EG2 explicitly prohibits unauthorized alterations to defensive armament. This isn't a hot rod in your backyard, Sergeant. This is a combat aircraft. Unapproved alterations can compromise structural integrity, create fire hazards, interfere with other systems. Sir, the system functions. I destroyed. I don't care if you destroyed the entire Luftwaffe. Voss gestures toward the tail section. That equipment is not Army Air Force's standard. It's not Boeing approved. It hasn't undergone testing protocols. Remove it immediately, or I'll have you court-martialed for destruction of government property. Romano's pilot, Lieutenant Holbrook, advances. Captain, my tail gunner achieved his first destruction today using that sight. Perhaps we should. Your opinion is acknowledged, Lieutenant. Voss interrupts him. The alteration will be removed. That's final. Word circulates through the 91st Bomb Group like wildfire. By evening meal, every gunner on base knows about Romano's illegal mirror sight and his first destruction. Opinions divide dramatically. Veteran gunners congregate around Romano's table, launching questions. How difficult is installation? What's the field of view? Can the mirrors withstand slipstream stress at 200 miles per hour? But the engineering officers and senior maintenance personnel react with concern. Captain Theodore Morrison, the group's assistant armament officer, convenes an emergency meeting on October 11th. 14 officers attend. The atmosphere is hostile. "Gentlemen," Morrison begins, "we have a discipline situation. A sergeant has performed unauthorized alterations using salvaged components of unknown origin. This establishes a dangerous precedent. If every enlisted man decides to re-engineer his weapon system based on personal preference, the room erupts. With respect, sir, that's ridiculous." Major William Calhoun, operations officer, stands. "Romano destroyed an enemy fighter using this system. Our tail gunners currently achieve 8% accuracy rates. If his alteration improves that, even marginally." "Marginally." Morrison's face reddens. "Major, we have no data, no testing. One successful engagement doesn't validate, then test it." Calhoun counters. "Put Romano up tomorrow with the alteration installed. Gun cameras will capture objective data. If it doesn't function, remove it. If it does function, perhaps we should be installing these systems instead of court-martialing the man who invented them." The argument intensifies. Engineers cite safety concerns. Combat officers cite casualty statistics. The meeting deteriorates into shouting. At 2000 hours, the dispute reaches Colonel Stanley Ray, commanding officer of the 91st Bomb Group. Ray served as a bomber pilot in the First World War. He's 53 years old, a career officer with a reputation for both discipline and pragmatism. He listens to the arguments from both sides for 90 minutes without interrupting. Finally, he speaks. "How many bombers did we lose last week?" Silence. "Captain Morrison, I asked you a question." 17, sir. 17 B-17s from this group alone. "And how many fighters did our tail gunners destroy during those missions?" "Confirmed destructions." 3, sir. Ray nods slowly. 17. Bombers 680, American boys against 3 confirmed German fighters. He looks directly at Morrison. "Captain, your concern about unauthorized alterations is acknowledged. Your concern about regulations is valid, but I'm more concerned about losing 17 aircraft every week because our defensive armament doesn't function. He turns to Romano. Sergeant, your alteration remains on your aircraft. You'll fly the next 3 missions with gun cameras recording every engagement. If your accuracy rate improves measurably, we'll authorize installation across the group. If it doesn't, we'll remove the equipment and you'll face disciplinary action for the unauthorized alteration. Understood. Romano salutes. Yes, sir. Ray stands. Gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned, and somebody provide me a set of those mirror drawings. If this video helped you see history differently, hit that subscribe button. We're covering stories the history books missed. Our next video reveals the radar operator who won D-Day from a basement in Portsmouth. October 12, 1943, Bremen. Romano flies his 4th combat operation with the modified sight system and gun cameras recording every moment. The 8th Air Force dispatches 236 B-17s against submarine construction facilities. Luftwaffe fighter wings scramble 250 interceptors. At 11:23 hours, over the German coast, the attacks commence. A Focke-Wulf 190 plunges from 7 o'clock high. Romano tracks it through the reflector sight, the illuminated reticle providing instantaneous aim point reference. His peripheral vision captures the mirror images displaying his gun alignment. He fires a 4-second burst adjusting in real time as tracer reflections show him his projectile path. The FW-190's wing root erupts in flames. The fighter breaks off trailing smoke. 11:47 hours. A Bf-109 approaches from 6 o'clock level, the classic tail attack profile. Romano centers the reticle, checks his mirror feedback, fires. The 109's canopy shatters. The fighter rolls inverted and dives away. Gun camera footage captures both engagements in detail. Romano returns to Bassingbourn with 2 confirmed destructions and 1 probable. His total ammunition expenditure, 380 rounds, that's 190 rounds per destruction. A dramatic improvement over the typical 2,800 rounds per destruction, averaged by conventional tail gunners. The engineering staff reviews the footage. Captain Morrison watches Romano's tracer patterns and target tracking. Even he cannot dispute the evidence. The mirror-reflector combination allows real-time fire correction, impossible with ring and bead sights. All right, Morrison admits it functions, but we need proper engineering drawings, standardized components, and installation procedures before we can approve group-wide implementation. How long? Colonel Ray asks. 6 weeks minimum. We'd need to coordinate with 8th Air Force Headquarters, submit modification proposals. We don't have 6 weeks. Ray turns to Technical Sergeant Kellerman. How many of these systems can you construct per day using available materials? Kellerman considers. With assistance from the sheet metal workshop, perhaps 4 complete assemblies. If we salvage reflector sights from damaged fighters and manufacture the mirror brackets here, then start constructing. I want every tail gunner in this group equipped within 2 weeks. Morrison objects. Sir, without proper authorization from 8th Air Force. Captain, I'll handle 8th Air Force. You handle the engineering specifications. Dismissed. What follows is an improvised manufacturing operation that would horrify military procurement bureaucrats. Kellerman and his maintenance team salvage components from across Bassingbourn airfield, reflector sights from written-off P-47 fighters, mirrors from damaged navigation instruments, aluminum stock from supply warehouses. They establish a production line in the maintenance hangar, fabricating 4 complete mirror sight systems per day. By October 20th, 18 B-17s in the 91st Bomb Group carry Romano's alteration. The results prove immediate and dramatic. October 20th, Durin mission. Tail gunners equipped with mirror reflector sights achieve 11 confirmed destructions against 47 fighter attacks. That's a 23.4% accuracy rate, nearly triple the previous average. November 3rd, Wilhelmshaven mission. 16 confirmed destructions, 68 fighter attacks engaged, accuracy rate 23.5%. November 5th, Gelsenkirchen mission. 13 confirmed destructions, accuracy rate 21.8%. The mathematical impact transforms bomber survivability. Luftwaffe pilots accustomed to attacking B-17s from the rear with relative impunity suddenly face accurate sustained defensive fire. German after-action reports note increased effectiveness of American tail weapons, recommend revising approach tactics. Major Hans Joachim Jabs, a Luftwaffe night fighter ace, temporarily assigned to day fighter operations, writes in his combat diary, "The flying fortresses have become significantly more dangerous. Their tail gunners now demonstrate accuracy previously seen only in power turrets. Attacks from the rear quadrant now carry unacceptable risk." The word reaches 8th Air Force Headquarters at High Wycombe. On November 18, Brigadier General Frederick Castle, commander of the 4th Bombardment Wing, arrives at Bassingbourn unannounced. He inspects Romano's tail station personally, examines the gun camera footage and interviews Romano for 30 minutes. "Sergeant, how did you know this would function?" Romano shrugs. "I didn't, sir, but the old sights definitely didn't function, so I figured anything else might be an improvement." Castle laughs, the first time anyone has laughed about this issue in months. Fair point. He studies the mirror assembly, testing the range of motion. "This can be manufactured at depot level." "Yes, sir. Sergeant Kellerman has engineering drawings now. Components are mostly salvaged, but we could source proper materials if needed." Castle nods. "I'm authorizing immediate implementation across the 4th Wing. Every B-17 will receive this alteration within 30 days. He looks directly at Romano. "Sergeant, you probably preserved more American lives than you'll ever realize." By December 1943, Romano's mirror reflector sight system, officially designated the Field Expedient Tailgun Aiming System, Type 1, is installed in over 200 B-17s across multiple bomb groups. The 8th Air Force commissions, formal engineering studies, Boeing's Cheyenne Modification Center, already developing the improved Cheyenne tail turret, incorporates Romano's reflector sight principles into their design. The production, Cheyenne turret, which begins appearing on B-17GS in January 1944, features an N8 reflector sight positioned almost exactly where Romano's salvaged P-47 sight sits in his improvised installation. The impact on bomber crew survival rates proves measurable and significant. For B-17 groups equipped with improved tail sighting systems, tail attack losses decrease by approximately 35% between October 1943 and March 1944. That translates to dozens of bombers, hundreds of lives, preserved by an alteration one engineering captain initially called illegal and dangerous. Romano continues flying combat operations through February 1944. His personal tally reaches 7 confirmed destructions and 4 probables, exceptional for a tail gunner. But more importantly, his innovation spreads through the 8th Air Force, then to the 15th Air Force in Italy, ultimately influencing defensive armament alterations on B-24 Liberators as well. On February 22, 1944, during Big Week maximum effort against German aircraft production facilities, Romano's bomber takes heavy flak damage over Leipzig. He continues engaging fighters while hydraulic fluid and fuel spray through the tail section. His aircraft crash lands in Belgium. The crew survives. Romano spends the final months of the war in a German POW camp. Michael Romano returns to the United States in May 1945, weighing 127 pounds, 18 pounds, lighter than his enlistment weight. The Army Air Forces awards him the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight, and notes his innovative contribution to defensive armament effectiveness. The citation carefully avoids mentioning that his innovation was initially prohibited. Romano never seeks publicity. He declines interview requests from military journals. When Boeing engineers invite him to their Seattle facility to discuss the Cheyenne turret development, he politely refuses, stating, "I just made what I needed to survive. Other people transformed it into something official." He returns to Pittsburgh, marries his high school sweetheart, and works as a machinist for 37 years. He rarely discusses the war. His children grow up knowing only that their father flew in bombers and modified some gun sights. But the legacy of his improvised mirror reflector system extends far beyond his personal modesty. The production B-17G Cheyenne tail turret incorporating reflector sight principles, Romano pioneered becomes standard equipment on all late-war flying fortresses. Boeing produces 8,680 B-17GS between August 1943 and April 1945, the vast majority equipped with advanced tailgun sighting systems directly descended from Romano's field alteration. The improved tail gunnery effectiveness forces the Luftwaffe to abandon their preferred 6 o'clock attack profile. German fighter tactics shift toward head-on attacks, more dangerous for the fighters but necessary to avoid improved tail defenses. This tactical change contributes to increasing Luftwaffe fighter losses throughout 1944. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey quantifies the impact. B-17 groups equipped with improved tailgun sights suffer 32 to 37% fewer tail attack losses compared to earlier model aircraft across thousands of bomber missions. That percentage represents approximately 840 aircraft and 8,400 crewmen who survive combat they statistically should not have survived. The principles Romano pioneered, combining reflector sights with peripheral vision, aids and real-time feedback systems, influence post-war defensive armament design, modern tailgun systems on aircraft like the B-52. Stratofortress employs sophisticated computing sights, but the fundamental concept remains. Give the gunner the clearest possible picture of where his weapons point and where his targets move. In 1983, the 91st Bomb Group Association holds a reunion at Bassingbourn Airfield, now preserved as a historical site. Several tailgunners who flew with Romano's mirror reflector sights attend. One of them, Gerald Hammond, brings a salvaged mirror bracket he's kept for 40 years. Hammond stands before Romano, now 60 years old, gray-haired working grandfather, and states, simply, "Because of you and those mirrors I came home. My kids exist because you couldn't accept inadequate gun sights. Thank you." Romano, uncomfortable with emotion, shrugs and replies, "You would have done the same thing. We all just wanted to survive long enough to go home." But that's where Romano is mistaken. Thousands of tailgunners face the same inadequate sights, the same impossible firing solutions, the same terrible casualty rates. Only one of them refused to accept the status quo. Only one of them had the audacity to break regulations, the skill to improvise a solution, and the courage to risk court-martial for the chance to preserve lives. Michael Romano died in 2003 at age 79. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette mentions his military service in a single line. World War II veteran, 8th Air Force. It doesn't mention that he preserved thousands of lives with mirrors and salvaged aircraft parts. It doesn't mention that his prohibited alteration became standard equipment. It doesn't mention that while generals and engineers debated regulations and testing protocols, a 22-year-old factory worker from Pittsburgh solved a problem they couldn't, because the best innovations don't come from expecting permission. They come from people who refuse to watch others perish while waiting for approval. Romano's lesson endures. Sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't following orders. It's knowing when the rules matter less than the lives.